All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely honored to have you here in our today's video. So I'm going to be speaking about how resisting emotions actually takes more energy than you think. So this is something that sometimes could be a really hard thing to really understand, because for most of us, this is something that we don't inherently see. But when this stuff is happening, it most likely is happening within the deeper subconscious and the deeper unconscious mind. So, for example, when you're in resistance to certain feelings, whether you're conscious of it, which looks like, oh, I'm triggered, I know I'm feeling this, I don't want to feel this, so I'm going to go do something else to try to, escape this or avoid this or push this down. That's what it would look like to consciously avoid feeling or consciously resist your feelings. But when we're sort of looking at it from another angle, there is a more subconscious way that we also end up resisting our feelings. So this could literally be you're starting to feel something in your body, let's say because you were triggered, or just some sort of emotion just starts to really present itself, and you're not even aware that that's coming up for you. So you're literally not even consciously aware that you're starting to feel what it is that you are feeling. So then you are also subconsciously trying to resist that feeling by attaching to some form of unhealthy coping mechanism, whether that's through, for example, substance abuse, unhealthy relationships, food addictions, creating pretty outlandish belief systems and stories that you attach to that are all rooted in trying to get away from what it is that you're actually feeling in the moment. Okay? Now, whether you're consciously resisting your emotions or unconsciously resisting your emotions, no matter what path you're choosing, you're wasting energy. Now, there's no shame or judgment or criticism here. You're a human being, and as humans, this is a part of the development process. We're definitely going to have our times where we're going to be in high levels of resistance to certain feelings in our body. But it becomes important for us to become more aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it, so that we don't have to resist as often, and hopefully so that we can get to a place in life where we're just living in the present moment and we're letting these energies naturally flow through us as they need to come through. So there's very low levels of resistance. Now, let me explain why there's so much energy that is getting wasted if you're doing this. Well, first of all, everything that you're manifesting in the world around you, whether that's environments, situations, circumstances, and relationships, which are pretty much all the fundamental things that also play a big role in how we're feeling internally, these things are manifested first from what's going on internally. So what's going on inside of your body, what's going on inside of your nervous system, what's going on inside of you at an emotional level, a mental level, and of course, a physiological level, is going to end up becoming what you are manifesting in the world around you. And then what you're manifesting in the world around you somewhat turns into a feedback loop. Because if you're manifesting from inside to then outside, then it's going to be easy to continue feeling what you're already feeling, because you're creating the physical reality and experiences and relationships that keep affirming what's going on inside of you. Now, this can be a positive thing, and this can also be a negative thing. So, if we understand this principle that we are manifesting our realities through energetic resonance, wouldn't it make sense that if you're in resistance to certain feelings inside of your nervous system, probably most likely the feelings that are associated with our traumas, like fear, anger, sadness, grief, the feelings of shame, the feelings of guilt, the feelings of abandonment, the feelings of betrayal. Wouldn't it make sense that if we're in resistance to feeling these emotions, that we're not necessarily being our authentic self? Because in the authentic self state, we're willing to experience the entire spectrum of emotions that exists within our system. When you're in your authentic self energy, you're able to feel sad just as you're able to feel happy. There's room and there's space to feel the uncomfortable negative feelings, just as there's room and there's space to feel the good feelings, the ones that feel positive and feel more fun. Okay? To be whole means we have to have a relationship with whatever's going on in our system, and we want to do our best to accept the emotions that are coming up. And there's a whole process behind that, and a lot of that comes down to having a proper education and then taking it very slow to build a foundation so you can really start honoring these things in a more effective way. But wouldn't it make sense that if I'm in resistance to my trauma that's related to emotions in my nervous system, that then I'm actually going to then manifest resistance in my environment, resistance in situations, resistance in relationships, and also resistance with my physical body? Wouldn't that make sense? So the answer to that question is absolutely. So if I'm in resistance to certain feelings, which so many of us currently in this today's time are, then I'm actually creating more resistance in everything else around me that in some ways is becoming a self-fulfilling feedback loop. So in other words, the more I'm in resistance to my trauma in my body, the more I'm creating a reality where there's resistance in everything else around me between situations, circumstances, environments, relationships, and my physical health. Now, the reason why that's important is because so many of us are wired to think we actually need to avoid certain feelings in our body. One, because they're not safe to feel them. Two, because they're bad and they shouldn't be there. And three, we simply just don't understand them and we don't even know necessarily even what to do with them. So when we can address these three components and sort of rewire our system to be more willing to face the uncomfortable feelings in our body, which means we're going to be more willing to go into unhealed trauma in our system, then we're literally going to set ourselves up to have nervous system regulation. And when you have nervous system regulation that is coming from an internal state of what I call self-energy, everything else around you, relationships, situations, circumstances, your physical health, your environments, they also start to regulate themselves. And a lot of this regulation that's happening is not even necessarily in your control. The nervous system is called the an aspect of our nervous system, a very powerful, significant aspect of our nervous system is called the autonomic nervous system. So all of these more so subconscious and unconscious automatic responses that your body does to make sure you're healthy, to make sure you're alive, to get you through your day, to help you be who you truly are. These are things that you don't necessarily need to control, yet they're still happening. And a lot of these things are happening in your favor. For example, your lungs. Your lungs are expanding and contracting. Your heart is beating. Your eyes know when to blink. You know when you go to eat food, you know how to swallow the food, and your stomach knows how to digest it. All of these different aspects of ourself are not necessarily being controlled by us. They're happening automatically. So that same automatic function there also occurs when we have some sort of nervous system regulation going on inside of our bodies. Things automatically, subconsciously start to regulate themselves, and then you start experiencing a life where it feels like there's a lot more luck, there's a lot more favor, there's a lot more things just seem to be going your way. And there's many people that call this living in alignment. And that really is pretty much what it is. Living in alignment means you're being authentic to who you are, which also means you're willing to feel the wholeness of emotional experiences that are going on inside of your body. And through that level of acceptance, surrender, and being yourself, that's what naturally starts to cause regulation. And when the nervous system regulates more and more and more over time, the more everything else around you starts to also regulate and starts to improve in a positive way. So if I'm resisting certain feelings in my body, it could be negative feelings, but it also could be positive feelings. I am inherently having to spend large amounts of energy to keep these feelings suppressed. And I might not even know that's even what's taking place here. Because remember, if this is happening sub and unconsciously, you don't even notice this is what you're doing, because you don't even notice that there's even a feeling that's coming up that you're uncomfortable with and that you feel like you can't feel. But think about everything it is that you have to do in order to keep certain feelings away. So I want to take you through just a little experience here. I want you to think of a time in your life that was a really tough situation or something that was really triggering for you. So go ahead and bring up this memory. Could be a recent memory, could be a past memory, something that was really charged in your system that was a really triggering experience for you. I want you to really bring yourself there and just sort of in this moment, try your best to just remember it and focus on what happened in this memory, and try to also become aware of what did it make you feel when you were in that experience. Okay, so now that you're with the memory, and now that you're connecting more to the emotional response that was triggered from whatever happened here, I want you to do your best to focus on that feeling. What exactly is that feeling that came up for you? Maybe it's fear, maybe it's sadness, maybe it's anger, maybe it's something else. Just really try to connect with that feeling. And now that you're with that feeling, I want you to stop feeling it. Do your best now to just stop feeling it and try resisting that feeling. Okay, so obviously this is a very interesting practice, but what you might have been able to notice when you try to now resist that feeling and not feel it anymore is, for a lot of you, I'm sure that felt quite uncomfortable, just because I know a lot of you are really doing that inner work and you're becoming more present and you're developing a lot more acceptance for these types of feelings. So for some of you, this felt very uncomfortable. And I'm sure there was probably even a sense of slight dissociation that occurred. Or maybe a lot of energy moved into your head and then tried to think your way out of feeling. Okay, I know for me that when I go through this practice, where I become aware of an emotion in my body and then I consciously try to resist it just to see what that feels like, for me, I notice energy goes to my head. I feel this sort of like a little bit of a pressure in my head, and my mind tries to almost immediately create some sort of a belief system or story that then tries to get me to not feel that feeling. This is just what I know. And then I feel like the energy sort of in my body sort of leaves. It's almost like I feel like my self energy sort of dissociates, and then the energy moves more so into my head. And then it's all about this belief system that then tries to keep those feelings away. So whatever it was that you experienced, maybe it's something you resonate with in regards to what I just said. Maybe you experienced something completely different. I think the underlying factor for whatever you did experience, though, is that it takes energy to resist what you're feeling, rather than just letting go and being present with what is there. So imagine living your life, whether you're consciously doing it or unconsciously doing it, or maybe a little bit of both, and you are just not feeling what's truly going on in your body. And you are so wired in the way to not feel, and you're so attached to whatever identity that does not want to feel those feelings. And you've been living the past 10, 20 years of your life, maybe even longer, resisting certain emotions. Think how much energy that actually is costing you. Like, really take a second to just try to comprehend that. How much energy does it take to wake up every single day, to have these certain routines, to have these certain habits, to think these certain thoughts, to have this certain identity that is all based on not feeling what's actually going on in your body? How much energy does it take to invest into that way of being, just so that you don't have to feel what's actually there? And how much energy is now being wasted? How much energy are you quite literally almost throwing down the drain? And how much are you cutting off your deeper subconscious and unconscious from entering into a state of alignment to then support you with whatever it is that you're doing? Think about how much that is going to get cut off and how much energy you have to, put in to this version of you that doesn't want to feel or thinks feeling is not good. And remember, there's no judgment and no shame and no criticism towards this version of you or towards this part of you that doesn't want to feel. But we definitely don't want to be unconsciously attached to this identity. And we definitely don't want to feed this identity especially as we're becoming more conscious. This is the importance of having a proper education to recognize what's going on in your system so that you can start reclaiming your authenticity again, and then start visiting the uncomfortable feelings and all of those traumas from the past that really need you to be present with them at that emotional level. So once you really become aware, like, oh my gosh, I am wasting a lot of energy resisting my emotions, and that's probably why my life isn't so great, or probably why it always feels like I'm a fish that's swimming upstream, or probably why there's so much resistance that's always happening to me, which then further perpetuates this sense of I'm a victim and the world is against me, which so many people live in. It first starts with this education that I'm sharing here, and then developing a foundation that allows us to start letting go of the need to resist what we're feeling. And when we start releasing that attachment to that part of us or that identity that didn't want to feel, when we start letting go of the belief systems and we start changing our lifestyle to be more congruent with what's going on emotionally, this is when we actually get to start feeling again. This is when, over time with consistency and patience, you start becoming more sensitive in your body and you start noticing, wow, there actually is fear and there is sadness and there is anger and there is all these other emotions in my system that I was so convinced weren't even there when I was identified with this part of me that didn't want to feel. And I'm now realizing the entire life that I created from that identity was just based on managing these wounds. And the whole time I was living that way, I had no idea how much I was really repressing and how much every day was like a battle. It was like an internal war of having to fight against these negative energies and these traumas and these emotions. And when you really get to see that version of you and understand it and realize you don't need to keep attaching to it or keep feeding it, now you're starting to really honor yourself. You're starting to really love yourself and let go. Now you get to essentially get to know your demons. Now you get to revisit these wounded parts of your inner child that have needed a parent the whole time, and you get to be that parent for them. You get to feel the burden of these wounded parts of you. You probably have all of these wounded parts of your inner child that are carrying all these different emotions that are heavy, and those parts of you don't know how to process that. They're probably completely just confused, don't know what to do with that energy, and they are just burdened. And it's only until you bring this self energy to then revisit these parts of you and emotionally process and feel through what these burdens are in your system, that you finally get to resolve those wounds and you finally get to release them. And now your nervous system starts to regulate. Your unconscious mind opens up. Your subconscious mind opens up, and it starts working with you, no longer resisting you because you're resisting yourself. It works with you. And now you're in alignment, and it looks like you're living a life where you're just really lucky all the time. Opportunities, relationships, experiences, circumstances, environments, they all start to show more and more favor as if they're working with you. Okay, things can literally completely change in quite a positive way, but you have to understand how your nervous system works, how trauma works, and how much energy you're actually spending resisting feelings. All right, so if you're looking for a pathway to go much deeper with your education, first link below is my Patreon. I have an entire trauma course that takes you from start to finish of everything you need to know to properly educate yourself to go through your own inner healing process. This entire course is designed to help you heal early childhood wounds while also regulating your nervous system. It's everything that I've personally applied in my life to change my life and to heal a lot of my childhood wounds and to get some regulation going on in my system. So it's everything that I've personally done myself that I'm also teaching in this course. So definitely consider it. Tier number 3 of the Patreon is called the Nervous System Healing Ritual. This is an actual ritual that I do on the 29th of every single month that is designed to be a remote energy transfer led by me for my community that helps to surface trapped energy in the body to bring it up to the conscious awareness of you so that you can actually start working with it, processing it, and then ultimately releasing it from your system. This is a real energetic catalyst. So this is not a quick fix. This is not a hack. This is not for everybody. This is for people that are really willing and wanting to go a lot deeper with their trauma healing process to start really regulating the nervous system and positively changing your life. So if you're someone that has that self-commitment, this could potentially be very valuable for your process. So if you're interested, that's tier number 3, first link below. Okay, second link is where you can book one-on-one calls with me, or you can jump into mentorships. This is the most intimate yet impactful way to currently work with me. And I would be honored to be able to mentor you or coach you through your development process. Second link below. Now the third link, this is YouTube memberships. If you become a YouTube member, you're primarily getting special recognition and special shout outs when I'm doing things like live streams. And I would be super happy to see you there. All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day or night, wherever you are, and I will see you in the next video. Later.